It's 9:42 Central Time as I record this here in Arkansas, but in LA it's still 7:42, still fairly early in the evening. And a few hours ago, President Donald Trump actually signed a memorandum deploying 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles in response to violent protests sparked by ICE immigration raids. Now, these 2,000 National Guard members are members who live in California and are part of what would be Gavin Newsom's, the governor's guard. But at this moment, they are now federal troops. They belong to Donald Trump for this incident. Clashes erupted in Paramount in downtown LA during these raids, where federal agents used tear gas and flashbang grenades against demonstrators who were demonstrating the raids going through Los Angeles. The deployment marks a dramatic escalation in the federal intervention. Essentially, large raids are going on. People were demonstrating. It was mostly peaceful as far as you can tell. And then it got a little rowdy, and the president fired up the troops, literally. What began as peaceful protests escalated when some demonstrators hurled concrete and fireworks at the ICE agents in the federal vehicles they were driving. Law enforcement responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. 118 migrants were arrested during the raids throughout the day, which triggered the demands for the protests and local authorities to actually react and speak on what was happening. Pushback was severe and very quick. First, Governor Newsom of California labeled the move as purposely inflammatory, that being the raids for ICE against the immigrants there as they went on, which brought on the protests and escalated, of course. And, of course, the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, condemned the raids as terrorizing immigrant neighborhoods, instilling local law enforcement could handle the unrest at first until the president decided they couldn't. Democrats in Congress and immigration advocates are echoing the concerns about what's going on in the massive parts of the raid, which, of course, we'll get to know about how the raids are being held up by the Trump administration and how they triggered the protests, which triggered the unrest. Essentially, the Trump administration starting the whole thing by going overboard in the raids for the day. The administration is framing the operation as an insurrection, both the operation of getting the migrants out, doing the raids, and the protesters themselves. Voters are Todd Holman, and Homeland Security spokesperson, described the campaigns as violence against ICE. Essentially, the rampage in crowds is essentially attacking the ICE agents and framing the troop deployments as necessary to protect federal law enforcement and enforce immigration laws in total. The federal intervention is raising concerns about the Insurrection Act and centralization of power in domestic affairs. It underscores nationwide tensions over immigration policy during the Trump's second term and spotlights the volatile rift between the sanctuary jurisdictions, as they're called, and federal government ahead of more aggressively immigration enforcement that is going on now and wants to be more in place as Trump can find ways past some of these lawsuits. Like I said, it's still relatively early on the West Coast. I'm watching, I guess, the East Coast feed of news. What I see is after they finished up all of the good night and good luck play stuff from CNN, they went straight to the coverage of what's going on in LA. They've been doing that right after they finished that up and checking the feeds for other things going on. News Nation, the only other channel that I've seen so far that's covering it, they have people in the streets doing that. Fox and CNBC and MSNBC, those channels are covering their normal tape programming. I've been prepping for this for a few minutes, so maybe they've changed in 5-10 minutes, but for the past hour or so since I've been watching coverage, right about the top of the hour, it has been a early night for everybody else, or regular night for everybody else. And for these channels here, CNN and News Nation, covering it as best as possible. CNN has essentially more commentary. They're watching it and doing more commentary stuff from their people they have that give their bits and pieces from their experts. News Nation is doing more in the streets commentary, talking about what's going on, seeing what's going on, giving you eyes and ears. As it's starting to probably get dark there, as it get closer to 8 o'clock there in the West Coast. Summertime hours are always kind of weird. We'll see how this thing plays out. We wanted to put this out there now, put it out there quickly, put it out there in the know, so we had sort of a breaking news sort of feel for the story. But the whole point is the questions that remaining on this one are the big ones. Is it so big that President Trump had to deploy federalized troops to hold things back? Because as we're getting from many other commentators, especially CNN, people who live in LA are still seeing people moving around in the city like normal. Various places in the city are blocked because of the protests, but the city itself is not in shambles. This is not a Rodney King situation. This is something much smaller in scale. And the president has the right to call up these troops in massive detail and federalize the troops on scale, but within reason. The question will be tomorrow, Will it be within reason? Will it be something that he should have done, something he should not have done? And now that he's done it, the precedent for calling up troops and federalizing them instantly has now been set. The bar is lowered, as Juliet Kayyem is saying on CNN, on what you need to do to send out federalized guard troops to handle a situation, to cover things in these cases. This is going to be ongoing. This is going to be a lot of questions. This will have the lawyers talking in the morning. It will. We'll see how this plays out. And while we're up late night on this Saturday or early morning Sunday when you see this, give me your comments. Let me know what you think about what's going on. This is a very multifaceted story, so we can go all over with this one. The raids. Are the raids excessive, or do you fall in line with how the Trump administration says, and we should send them all back because they are here illegally? The protests. Were the protests, was that fight back excessive, or were they pushing back in a way that you could deem was something that was within methods, within force, getting their point across without being overly aggressive? Obviously, they were a bit aggressive. Was the city handling it well enough, or did the United States federal government have to mobilize troops to handle it on their own? Obviously, the government mobilized the troops, but the city and the state seems to think they had it under control. And now that the feds have mobilized these troops, the president has called up these troops under the federal act. Does that mean we'll see more of this happening across the nation in even smaller type of situations going here? Is this the new norm, having Trump call up federal guard troops in various places where there are protests because there are protests? We're going to get a wide swath of opinion on this one, but this is something that's going to cover us for a couple days once the smoke literally clears, tear gas and smoke clears in Los Angeles, and we can see what's happening in the aftermath. But in the current state where we in the question mark failed, I want your answers to the questions we don't have yet. And I want your questions that we have no answers for at the moment. Ask away. We'll talk about this one in the comments, and we'll talk more about this definitely with something in a bit longer form as we get more details, because we're definitely covering this one for a few days.